So now at this point, the last part of this course is now starting. So in the first part of this course, you basically had an introduction to what economics as a discipline is and how choices are made, and a review, or at least seeing it for the first time, of what supply and demand is. Then in part 2 of the course, which you've just now completed, you had 3 macroeconomic statistics that economists tend to focus their attention on. That would be production, as measured by GDP, employment, which we kind of measure by the unemployment rate, and the price levels, which we measure with the CPI, or the Consumer Price Index, and looking at whether inflation exists or not. And so now we have a series of topics that basically then look at when you now see an economy that you don't like for some reason. Let's say not enough production, or too high of prices, or too many people out of work. How can you adjust it? Well, it turns out that the 2 tools that we have are using the monetary system, which is referred to as monetary policy, or the government spending, which is referred to as fiscal policy, which some of you may have also heard of Keynesian economics. That's what government spending to stimulate the economy is known as. So before we can get into that, we've got Topic 7, which basically just looks at the money and banking system that exists primarily in the United States. So we look at what counts as money, how we measure money, that basically money allows us to avoid having to barter with each other on things. And so part of this is definitional. Probably the most shocking thing that could be possibly learned from this would be that money that we have in our wallets is not based on the gold standard or anything like that. It's what's known as a fiat money, meaning its value is only determined by the fact that the government says it has value, which is true, and it's also true for every other country in the world. So part of what you'll need to know here would be knowing how to calculate and knowing what's in components of M1 of the money supply, M2 of the money supply. And then really the most difficult part of the math involved in this is not something that even years ago I would spend more time on, but today just isn't as relevant. And that would be looking at the fractional reserve banking system, the fact that banks do not hold all of their cash. And so because they do not hold all of their cash, that then what that means is that you can create more money by lending out money. And that's what is probably the more difficult part of this topic, is walking through what's known as the money multiplier that comes from the fractional reserve banking system.